Hello, everybody. I'm Dominic Palazzolo. I'm the chef owner of Marvelous Molds, and I am here with a celebrated cake decorator and my friend, Earlene Moore. And many of you may know that for the past 4 or 5 years, we've actually been making molds together, and they're called Earlene's Enhanced Lace Molds. And today we're going to be spending some time with you introducing our new line. We have 11 new styles.
11 new ones, yes.
That we are going to introduce to the entire world. And I'm not exaggerating. These molds have been popular all over the world. Every country that has cake decorating or loves cake loves these molds.
Well, they're the best.
Well,
They're the best.
I think so. I do. We try hard. But what I wanted to do is just go a little bit into how we actually got started.
Okay.
And I think it was about 5 years ago, right?
I was judging the Oklahoma show, and during a break, you approached me and said, if you ever have an idea for a mold, would you call me? I said, I don't have anything anybody wants, and walked off.
I thought she was totally uninterested. I wanted to collaborate with her because, I had gone to many shows, and there are a lot of cake decorators who owe their start in cake decorating to Miss Earlene. She's actually known to a lot of people as their cake mom, right? I think you've had a number of
sugar daughters and sisters, sugar daughters and sons, yeah.
And there was just a real warmth and that people felt towards Earlene. And I just got this feeling that she has been in cake decorating so long that she was a wealth of knowledge, and I wanted to collaborate with her, if possible, on a line of molds that would be really attractive and compelling to the market. And so I approached her, and you basically said, no, I don't have any ideas, right?
No. And then I went home, and I had a white cake 4-tier that had been sitting for a year or so. That was a past Oklahoma entry. And it was just sitting there in the thing, and I had 2 customers in the next couple of weeks come in and say, when I get married, that's the cake I want. And I thought, you can't have it, honey. Nobody has those molds. And so then I thought, maybe if we could make molds where they were already overpiped, because I always overpiped every lace mold I ever used on a cake, then I overpiped it before a customer got it, because I felt like you couldn't even see it 4 foot away. So if you overpiped it, you could see it across the room. So then I called Dominic and said, hey, what do you think about this?
Okay, as promised, Earlene is going to give us a demonstration of how she actually enhances a real piece of lace by piping over it with royal icing. So what we have here is just a piece of lace that we've colored blue so that when she pipes on it, there'll be some good contrast and you can see how she actually overpipes the lace. So take it away, Earlene.
Okay. Now there's some of the segments in the lace that don't need overpiping, like the little bit of texture that's in the leaves and the little tiny lines, I piped those so we have good connections. But inside these flowers, they'd be piped around. These we fill in. So because these 2 are going to be connected, I'd pipe this line first.
Okay.
And then where it connects, you got to make sure you got a smooth connection.
Okay.
So you use a damp brush, and that's the wrong one. Damp, not wet. And smooth that out. And then you come back and do this one last little petal here to cover up where you started.
Oh, I see.
So there's some things that have to have an order to them.
That's some steady hands you've got there, Earlene.
And then you got to leave a place to pipe a line there. So you don't pipe every line, you just do enough to augment it.
Right.
Like this one, you pipe the little lines. These, you let the mold just pick up the texture that's already there.
And then what that does is royal icing dries almost rock hard.
Right.
And it has like a natural adhesive property to it, so it kind of, slinks down into the structure of the lace, and it stays on there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Earlene, now that we've shown everybody what enhanced lace really means, I think it's time that we introduce our new designs,
Oh, the
don't
new
you?
fun stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start out with Martha.
Okay.
Which I got to tell you, I think this is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I love the daisies. And it's so different than everything else that
Oh,
we've
yeah,
got.
yeah. And I've seen already some of my staff making the daisies different colors. What I thought we would do in this segment is to actually show how to properly use the mold, how to fill it and unmold it.
Okay.
One of the things that I want to show or make clear is that there's this blade around the top of the mold, and I think a lot of our customers feel that filling the mold to the top of the blade is what you're supposed to do. But, the top of the blade is not actually the top of the mold. It's there to cut your fondant, and it's there to put a nice clean edge on it.
To make their life easier.
Yes, and to decorate a cake faster.
Right.
The real top of the mold is level with the lip here, okay? And the blade is really sitting on top to do its function. Now, I know that you like to actually make it thinner.
Oh, yes, much thinner.
So what you'll do is you'll roll your fondant so that it actually comes lower than the lip, right?
Right.
And that's perfectly fine. And I really want everybody to understand that, we make this mold so that, imagine you were going to fill this with chocolate or cooked sugar like isomalt. Well, you know what? You would want that full thickness so that you have a piece that isn't going to break and you can handle it. But don't be afraid to go ahead and underfill the mold. There's no rule that says you've got to fill it to the top. You can actually make your fondant quite thin. And doesn't that give kind of a more sophisticated or prettier effect on a cake?
When you put it on a cake and it's too thick, it looks heavy.
Yes.
And people think it's going to pull the buttercream off, or that the fondant behind it is thicker than that, and they're just like, oh, I don't want to eat any of that. So you want to make it as thin as you can.
Right.
To make it look pretty.
My rule of thumb is if you're putting it on the cake and it looks like a biscuit, you've probably made it too thick.
Oh, yeah,
And I've seen
Way too
sometimes,
thick.
they pack it all the way to the top and it looks like a biscuit. But anyway, we're wasting time. We've got to get going
All right,
here.
That's okay.
All right,
Roll it out.
What I like to do is, this is a pounce. It's just a pair of tights, and you put some cornstarch in there. And then I knock that out real good. And now we're...
See, and I never do that to the mold. I do that to the fondant or gum
you
paste
do?
piece.
Okay, and you know what? We'll show that, okay? But see, I have this really great one molecule thick powder coating on the inside. And I think what that does is it really helps in the unmolding.
That's right. It does.
Now, what I like to do is I like to incorporate some Tylose. It's also known as CMC.
Makes it a little firmer.
Yes. And the thing that we have to remember is that the fondant manufacturers, and when you make your own fondant, you make something that's meant to be put over a cake, and it's got to be really flexible, and it doesn't have the right characteristics for molding. We want it a little firmer so that it takes the impressions and you can unmold it a lot easier.
Right.
So what I do is I'll just take a pin and I'll just start rolling this out, okay?
Now, if you've got a pasta machine,
Yes.
I take it down to a 4 or a 5, depending on the piece that I'm working on.
Now, is that on like a KitchenAid pasta machine
No,
attachment, or is it one of those
It's just a little
hand?
separate thing with an electric
Right.
motor.
Okay.
No hand rolling for me.
So I'm just rolling this out. Now, I think we can show them something that maybe they haven't seen before. We can use the back of this, right?
Right.
And
right.
what we can do is we can make an impression, okay?
Which is really good for the bakeries where they've got the sheeter and they roll out a bigger piece of fondant. Well, then they've got to know how many pieces they can get out of it. This is the thing to do. Mark how many pieces you get, and you know if you got to roll any more, if you've got enough.
Right, so if we had a big sheet, we could just be cutting nice
Right.
squares, put them under plastic, and then we could use this mold and put it right on the
Right.
cake. You
And
really
because
move.
this is a little larger than the actual design, so if you overlap just a little bit, it doesn't matter a bit.
Oh, that's great. So why don't you show them your trick, okay?
Oh, these?
Yes, I
Okay.
think that was really sharp.
Not everybody has a pasta machine, so you got to have some way of gauging how thick it is. So these are just craft sticks I bought at the craft store, or for the little pieces, I want it even thinner. Then these are the coffee stirrers, and I think I
Oh.
bought these at Walmart. I'm not sure where I got them. I got them a long time ago, and it was a big package. So if you want it really thin, like you're going to do the new Kathy mold, is a cute little mold, and it needs to be thinner, then I use these. Yeah, there we go.
We're going to get to her.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
So what you
when
would
you
do,
roll
yeah.
between these, then you get this consistent thickness all the way over without having to have a pasta machine.
Oh, that's a great tip. I
Okay.
want to try that. Well, that makes it really easy. See, that's 50 years of experience, ladies and gentlemen.
50 plus. When I came off of the ark, they didn't do too many cakes.
You know, that really works nice. I'm going to use that in my next demo. Okay. So, we've got our sheeted fondant, and then we take our mold. Now, you said that instead of cornstarching the mold, you
Right.
put cornstarch on this.
Well, let me show you one
Okay,
other thing.
go ahead.
Okay. So if you have this piece
Mm-hmm.
of fondant, and then you're going to make
Make the
mark
imprint.
it,
Yeah.
so you know where the impression is. Then you pick it up and you dust the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Then you lay that over your piece.
Okay.
You know, you've cut all the excess off around it. That way you
Right.
know you've got it centered right over your piece.
So we
Okay.
can do that. Just
Okay.
And see, a pounce makes it so easy. And you can just put a really nice thin coating on there, especially if it's colored fondant.
Right.
You know, too much cornstarch is going to,
It's going
you
to
know,
firm it up
right,
even more.
or
yeah.
and interfere with your color. So now, when I watch people use our molds, they're very timid. You know, they feel like they've got to kind of be very gentle with the mold.
Oh, no. These are tough. These are tough.
Yeah, you know, the best thing to do is just take your fingertips and really push down on that mold. And you can see the blades starting to cut through, and that's a really good sign.
Let me tell you funny about the blades. I had a customer order some of these, and when she got them, she said, "But you didn't include my blades." And I said, well, the ridge around there is what Dominic calls the blade. So now sometimes when I'm talking about it, I call it the ridge instead of the blade.
Well, whatever makes them understand.
Right,
You know, it
right.
is something very new.
It's
And-
different.
Yes. But this is what I like. We just take the pin and you know, if you push too hard, you got to remember that this blade is made out of silicone, okay? Pushing too hard is just going to flatten that blade and it's not going to do anything. So, I mean, do you see? I'm just really using my fingertips, okay? And I'm just taking, and then I'll take some long strokes and look at that. It'll just cut right through.
And just magically, you just take the excess away.
You know, if you want to think about how this happens, don't think about the silicone blades here working like a knife. Think about it like how a boat goes through water.
Oh,
it
good.
actually
That's
just
good.
parts the water, and when we roll with our pin, we're actually pushing the fondant like water over the front of a boat, and it just parts. And that's really what the magic is. That's how it all happens.
And this mold has windows in it.
Yes, it does.
To his genius. The ridge and the windows are his genius.
Well, I remember you telling me that it'd be really great if we could have some openings. So all you have to do is, while the outer blade was cutting, the inner blade also cuts. And this is what's going to be, we call them windows, but it's the opening in the lace design. And when you put that on a cake, you know, your base layer or fondant on the cake can be one color, and then your lace can be another color. And so you have that play that of between, you know, your, and you can match a color palette of a bride or a wedding or all kinds of things you can tie into it. So what I do is I use my fingers to do this, and I just make sure that I'm pressing the fondant into this detail in the bottom of the mold. Now, we showed you how we enhance every lace pattern with the royal icing. So what happens is that the details in this mold are extreme.
They're deep.
Yes, and I have to say here that it's important that you make your fondant thick enough so that it'll fill those details and you don't see the details coming through.
Oh, see, I like to see that detail.
Oh, you do? Okay, so you'll even go that thin,
Yeah.
right?
So this is my little tool.
Take it away, Earlene. Show them that.
Once you got it to there and you flattened it as much as you can with your fingers, then I take this thing and I just beat the hound out of it. See, I want to see that detail.
Did you
I
say
want it-
beat the hound out
Yeah,
of it?
that's
Oh,
what
I
I
like
said.
that. I'm going to remember
I
that.
haven't beaten too many hounds, but you know, that's just an old Texas expression. So that really forces that down into those details. And then I take, where you have these little places that have indentions, I take a little tiny ball and I fill that in. Because when you're handling it, once it comes out of that mold, if you push on that,
Right.
you've pushed it in. So anytime there's one of those deep indentions, I just fill it up with a little tiny ball
Okay.
so that the rest of it is not thick, but that, come back here, but that one place that is deeper and thicker won't collapse on you.
That's a really great tip. And, you know, on the cake, then, you're going to have more volume, especially like,
Right.
I know that, you know, you're putting those on the back of those daisies.
Right.
And so those flowers are going to pop more on the cake just
That's
because you
right.
did that little addition, right?
Yeah, right. Then
So
the next step is,
yes, now this is a whole nother thing about the blades. You know, the blades aren't just for cutting. What you can do is, well, first of all, let's talk about conventional molds where, you know, it's just a block of rubber and you got to push it in, and I call it finger packing, where they'll take a mold and what they'll do is they'll do a lot of this, you know, and then the fondant goes over the edge, and when they take it out, then they have to take a little knife and they got to trim the edge, and it just
Right.
takes forever. I mean, I've had cake decorators tell me they're 2:30 in the morning putting these molds on cakes and working with that. And, I
Right.
mean, they're actually crying because they've got to do all that and they're stuck. So in order to get around that, and the reason why this mold speeds up the process is because this blade can be just turned in, okay?
and it just cleans it up beautifully. You don't have to do anything else.
You know, like on your counter in the kitchen, you know, they just don't have a square edge. They call it like a bullnose or a radial edge. That's exactly what pushing this blade in does. And all you have to do is put your finger on the outside of the blade and just push it in and down.
Just sort of lay it over.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, once you get used to this, you can go very, very quickly with both fingers. See that? And very, very quickly you go around. And then the windows, instead of going in, you want to push those outward.
Or the little ones, you just sort of wiggle them around.
Yes. And that will clean up the edges on the inside of the openings, or what Earlene and I call the windows. Okay? All right, so now what we're going to do is every one of our molds has this unmolding lip,
Keep it out.
okay? And that is so that you can just take your thumb and forefinger and actually grab and stretch the mold. What I also like to do is push from underneath, like right here. Watch what happens when I push underneath. It really takes that edge.
That's a step I forget to do.
And see that? Look at that. Now, there are people who will actually put their conventional molds in the freezer so
Right.
that they can get it out. And once again, I think that's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
When you're making a large cake or a lot of cakes, you really want to just be able to take your fresh fondant out and go ahead and apply it to the cake. So now we know, I mean, you can just tell that's just
It's
ready
just
to
gonna
pop
right
out.
out of there.
And all you do now is just,
Work it off of the windows.
and there you
And
go.
you've got a beautiful lace piece.
Isn't that great?
Oh, I love that color. Good color.
So that is the Martha.
All right. Part of the thing I love about molds is using elements out of it. I can no longer do the real fine piping, a lot of it, because my hands won't let me. 50 plus years, do a little wear and tear on your hands. So the molds to me are an answer to do something really pretty without having to do a lot of hand piping. So the elements you pull out of there allow you to do things that are new, that are not just out of a mold. So this one, we could take just this little top section off, and then you could move it over and add it to another mold. You could move it down and you add it to the bottom of the heart if you wanted it to look longer that way. So, you don't have to do it that way. Then this one, you can cut just this section off, but you need to clean up just under this little V. Again, angle in, don't just cut straight. That makes it look like the edging on the rest of the mold.
So you're undercutting with the wheel knife.
Right, and keep your
Okay.
fingernails out of it if you can. So this could then be added at the bottom.
Oh.
You don't have to leave them like they are. You can
Or you
add
cut-
them someplace else.
Or if you cut it right, you'd have a nice little heart,
That's right.
you know?
And who can't use a heart on a wedding cake? you know?
Sure.
This one is the Sheila mold, and this one has two really pretty elements in it. To cut that right down around that, and then right down around this side. Again, angling in. And then you have a piece that looks like a small shield. I missed a little piece there. I'm having a hard time seeing it. But that little piece
Oh,
then you
yes.
could take and you could put a little bow to it and use it elsewhere on a cake.
So you mean like you could put it over a pipe like this and bend it or something?
a little
or?
smaller one maybe.
Right.
Yeah, like a handle on your
Right.
brush or whatever, so that you have a little piece that has some movement to it. And the other piece in this one, I think almost every mold has things that you can take out of it and use as an element. So we could take this bottom section and take that out, and then you have a piece that you can use. You could use it at the bottom of this. You could use it at the bottom of this.
Oh, yes.
You could put this heart down inside of it. There's just no limit to what
Wow,
you can do
Earlene.
with all the elements in all of the different molds.
You know what? It's a way of making every mold multifunctional.
Right, right. And
That
if
is
you
so
have,
cool. I mean, if you just take this away, it almost looks like a butterfly.
And if you have little places like this little place, just take a Dresden tool, a foot tool, and just kind of tuck them under a little bit. It's not a big deal to fix those places. If you have a place that needs sharpening down in here, you could also use that foot tool, or you could take the other end and just clean it up a little bit.
And you were showing in another segment how you could take that top off and
Right.
make a nice piece. And then, you know, I wanted to see you go ahead and
take that
cut that
section
one
off.
out. Yeah.
Okay. So this one you wouldn't cut in totally. That's where you come back and use your little black tool. So that's a beautiful
Wow.
little element that you've got a
That
matching
is
one on
so
the other
great.
side.
Right. So you have the right and the left. And that's from the Edna Tiara.
Yeah, then you might want to stick the little heart down here and one of these on one side and one on the other, and then you get a little Victorian looking design instead of the two Kathy and Edna. So
I think that's
don't be afraid of using them.
I think that's a real unique way of looking at the molds, and it presents all kinds of possibilities. I think that's just terrific.
Makes it a better buy for you. When you can use them in multiple ways, not just one way.
The wisdom of Earlene. So, Earlene, a lot of my customers ask, how do we actually attach the pieces to a fondant cake and a buttercream cake?
Right. Attaching to a fondant cake is pretty easy because you can just brush the back of the molds with a light brushing of water. You don't want it wet. You just want it sticky. So it's just a damp brush. You don't want a wet brush. And then it's just an application and sugar sticks to sugar. That's not an issue at all. Buttercream's a little bit different because buttercream you want to use piping gel because piping gel's a little stickier. But again, you don't want to use too much. So we thought we'd just show you a little bit on attaching with the piping gel.
Well, now, okay, so we have a chocolate buttercream cake here.
Right.
Okay. And you've already attached some of the fondant pieces.
Right.
Okay, so this is something that I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
So I have customers say to me, oh, my customers don't like fondant, you know, and they don't want a fondant covered cake.
That's right.
And they want buttercream. And I would say the vast majority of Americans feel that way.
For taste, yes.
For taste, they prefer a buttercream. Okay. Well, what I tell them is that go ahead and put on the base coat like we have here with buttercream, and then use the advantages that fondant gives you. You know, we can mold it, we can shape it, and we could do so many things with it in order to put the details on like you've done here. And I call it a hybrid cake, where basically it's mostly buttercream, and then decorate and embellish with the fondant pieces, which is exactly what you're doing right here. And that's a marriage of both worlds, and it gives you a great look, great taste.
And you don't have heavy fondant, you just got light touches. And who says you can't put flavoring in fondant?
Yes.
Why not make it taste good? Or mix choco pan with it. I find that a fourth choco pan, 3/4 fondant, makes it taste a lot better, and it makes it easy to work with.
Choco pan is a fondant that is made with chocolate.
Well,
right?
it's a fondant chocolate mixture.
Right,
Yes.
right. So yes, I agree, 100%. It's just a great way to use the advantages of both mediums.
Right.
Buttercream for the taste, and fondant for the visual effects that you can pull off. And so a lot of customers, they kind of think, well, can I really put a fondant decoration onto a buttercream cake?
Right.
And I think that's what you're going to show us right now, right?
Now, one of the things that's important is to make your molds as thin as you can, because buttercream doesn't hold the weight that fondant would.
Right.
So this is just straight piping gel, and I want to put it on very, very lightly. I don't want to put a heavy coat on it, just enough to make it sticky. I'm not brushing the whole thing. I am just brushing little sections of it. But this is where it's going to connect. So I want to make sure that there's some there and down where it's going to connect on the other end. Okay. Just try to keep it off your hands as much as you can.
And you're just going to parallel park it right in there.
Parallel park it right there. Stick it right up there. Just make it match your design and just keep going. Okay, that's the Maxine mold. Now, when I put these on a while ago, I realized that the Sharon mold is too long to fit in there. So I just took my little wheel, trimmed it off, and I'm not going to put them on every one. I'm going to put them on every other one. Okay, just a little bit to make it sticky. Not a lot. It's not certainly not wet. Okay, every other one. So that's still a little bit wet. Let's make that fit right in there. Uh-oh. Stuck to my finger instead of the cake. Okay, there we go there.
So that's just piping gel, right? Is
Right,
that what
just
you
straight
prefer to
piping
use?
gel. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Piping gel is a cake decorator's friend. You can add it to royal icing when it's a little too thick. You can add it to buttercream if you want to do string work and want a little more flexibility. It's just a great, I don't know what you call it. It's not an icing.
Yeah, it's almost like an additive.
Yeah. Or you could pipe it straight. There are people who pipe it straight. Okay, this one we're going to put right on the board.
Okay.
Match it up right there. That makes our board not look a little bit better.
And let's see, this is the Kelly. This is the Kelly border
is it Kelly
mold.
or Lydia? I think it's Lydia.
Let's see, it's right here, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Kelly.
Names are on each one of them, so if you don't know which one you have, just look at your mold.
That's true. Well, you know, I don't know. I think you feel the same way. I feel like these molds are like my children. You know?
Well, that one
when you
is
have
my daughter-in-law.
when you have too
Kinda
many
is my
kids, you start
children.
forgetting their names.
Okay, we're just going to match up again and bring it on around. So you just continue design until you get it all the way around.
That looks amazing, Earlene.
And you don't have a covering of buttercream with no design on it. You don't want to pipe anything, so it doesn't take long to mold those, and just stick them on with some piping gel.
You know, and I think we really answered the question, can you put fondant decorations on a buttercream cake?
If you have buttercream that doesn't get a crust on it, is it the Italian meringue buttercream that doesn't crust? Chill it.
Yes.
And if you chill it good and get it hard, then you can apply it. And then you want to put it back in and chill it to keep it cold. But you can do it on Italian meringue too.
Absolutely terrific. Well, Earlene and I would like to thank you for watching this video. We really enjoyed showing you how we actually make the enhanced lace molds, and it's been a real pleasure having you here, Earlene.
It's been fun.
Yeah. And you know, I think we've answered a lot of questions people have about how we make these very special molds that have been so popular all over the world. I think it's a thrill to be introducing 11 more styles. And I think these 11 styles are almost a culmination of what we've learned in the past. And you know, our Edna and the swags and the line that we have is really well balanced. So
we tried to add where we were a little bit limited to give more opportunities, more design opportunities for you decorators.
And I know everybody enjoyed all the tips and knowledge that Earlene shared with us. And so, again, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoyed watching.
Have fun with them.